Gremlins 2: The New Batch was released in 1990, 6 years after the original film, this time promising more chaos and a whole lot more comedy. The setting of the film, for the most part, is entirely found within a skyscraper owned by a character named Daniel Clamp, a real estate and media mogul very clearly designed after Donald Trump, somebody who likes to put his name on everything. The Chinese shop owner from the first film has since died, which has given Clamp the ability to tear down that shop and continue building onto his empire. That leaves little Gizmo caught by some weird animal testing scientists who also work for Clamp. You know who also works for Clamp? Our heroes of the first film, Billy and Kate, who have discovered Gizmo in their clutches and they attempt to save him. But obviously things go a little bit crazy. More gremlins appear, and this time crazier and more meta than before. This movie is absolutely bonkers, no doubt about it. I had heard going in that the movie was going to be a lot more funny, for one, but also a lot more tongue-in-cheek with meta references, making fun of itself in the process, which was something that I was honestly really looking forward to because that's one of the few reasons that I love the Chucky films, when they got to be a lot more goofy and they took themselves less seriously, which it needed. In the same breath, though, the first Gremlins movie had an incredibly strong balance between 80s horror and comedy, and to lose that grasp on really good horror would naturally be problematic because that only helped the humor in that first movie. But I was pleasantly surprised with how this movie handled itself. Right from the get-go, it knew exactly how to prepare its audience for what they were about to be watching, and that was with a Looney Tunes short cartoon thing, with Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck fighting. Perfect allegory for the rest of the movie, which you can easily call a loony film. The skyscraper in the movie is another example of how ridiculous the movie is, albeit probably a bit more subtle than everything else that happens throughout the movie. On the exterior, you're looking at a building that by all accounts appears to be just some kind of corporate office. Inside though, that's another story. There's so much going on. It's like a mall inside this place with tour guides, probably some kind of food court, a TV recording studio with a number of programs currently being filmed. There's an animal testing area. It's like Rockefeller Center, but a lot crazier. I half expected to also see a bowling alley, a bookstore, a bar, Broadway show, you name it. I say that that's the subtle humor because once the Gremlins are born, that is when things go completely off the rails and things get to be a lot more meta. You have famous film critic Leonard Maltin reviewing Gremlins 1 during Gremlins 2 while being attacked by said gremlins. You have the gremlins break the movie itself while people are watching Gremlins 2, and the theater staff need the help of none other than Hulk Hogan to intimidate the gremlins to put the movie back on. You have another sort of evolution of gremlins where they take potions and they turn into some weird freaking versions of the gremlins. One turns into like a genius who can talk and also has a pair of glasses that appeared out of nowhere. One grows wings and flies directly into a vat of cement, ends up being a gargoyle on a building. One turns into like electricity or something. To be honest, it's hard to nail down what in the world is going on in this movie, but it was definitely entertaining. However, because it was more comedy than anything else, as feared, that balance between horror and comedy is completely lost. And so is the feeling of dread, tension, and weight. You don't really fear what's going on, you don't think that anybody's really gonna die, and if they do, you know it's gonna be very cartoony in nature. My favorite character of the first movie, who's Billy's dad, isn't in the movie, and his failed inventions that kind of made my experience with that film what it was, is kind of tame here. They wanted to replace that with some of this Donald Trump-like character's failed business strategies. I guess that's kind of funny, but not in the same kind of endearing way, and that's the main issue that I find with the movie. Apart from losing that balance between horror and comedy, the sequel also lost a lot of heart and endearing qualities at the same exact time. You have Billy and Kate back in the forefront, and once again, they are forgettable, nothing characters that are just there to move the story forward, not much more. The characters that I really liked watching in this movie, though, came down to John Glover playing the Trump wannabe. Christopher Lee is also in the film as the mad scientist, Dr. Cather. My favorite line of his was, "Splendid. This must be my malaria. Just rabies. I've already gotten rabies. I'm supposed to get the flu this week." Just stealing the scene every time that he pops up. I've always enjoyed when Christopher Lee gets to be goofy with his performances, reminding me of the time that he played that evil Cinder character in The Stupids. Just good stuff. The Gremlins themselves, by the way, are a lot more distinguishable than in the first movie. That was a pleasant surprise. In the first movie, you knew Gizmo and Stripe very well, but every other gremlin blended in with one another. In this film, there's a lot more distinguishable characters in the mix that stand out, both as Mogwai and as the gremlin version. I appreciated that because one pet peeve that I usually have when I watch a movie is when it feels like it's filled to the brim with non-distinct characters just doing random things. This felt more unique. I did appreciate that. But one thing that I was confused about was when Gizmo first gets water on himself and he multiplies into other Mogwai, what comes out already feels evil. The Mogwai aren't supposed to feel evil. At least that was my interpretation of the first movie. They're a little naughtier, sure, a little bit more pranky, I suppose, but not evil. In this, that's how I felt. They immediately pop out of Gizmo and they create this plan to get rid of him, throw him into a vent so that they can go on with their evil plans. I wasn't a huge fan of that change. But thankfully, it's short-lived before the Gremlins themselves appear. Overall, I definitely had a good time with the movie. I don't think that it's really as good as the first movie, but I will at least admit that it's darn close, within 1% close, for a variety of reasons. Even though the more balanced approach for horror and comedy is what I think definitely works for the film more than uproarious meta-humor, the meta-humor does make up for a lot of what's missing. I could see this movie being a love it or hate it type of sequel, where some prefer it over the first, while others obviously prefer the original. Me, I do prefer the original, but this is still a good time, so while I rated that first movie 77 out of 100, I rate the sequel, Gremlins 2, The New Batch, 76 out of 100 possible stars, or a B letter grade. But what about you guys though? Are you a fan of this sequel? Do you think that it's better than the first movie? Why or why not? As for YouTube, guys know what to do. Hit the like, subscribe button, and bell to be notified when I come out with my next review, whenever and whatever that may be on. And until that day comes, peace out.